Folks, hello and welcome to Talking Crit. We got a full panel for you tonight.
We
So,
do.
for those that somehow don't know, I am Eric Tenkar, the bartender in the OSR. Uh, this direction from me, I'm getting that right this time, is none other than Bad Mike, my once a week work spouse, and one of the men behind North Texas RPG Con.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't get the angles right. So Jim Kitchen, probably best known these days as the auctioneer of gaming. He runs auctions at all the major cons and some of the minor ones. And the one only Greyhawk Grognard, Joe Bloch himself.
Who
It's
apparently can't get weekends right for cons. So
from an undisclosed location in the Flanness.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Joe nearly gave me a heart attack. It's like
I gave myself a heart attack. I got to redo my hotel.
well, it's fitting we have Joe on because the last couple of shows we've been, and then Eric has had a whole series of YouTube about OSR, and Joe is one of those things I remember from the early days of the OSR because he was there and he was doing stuff, and the Greyhawk Grognard I first knew through the blog he did, and and we talked about how important those blogs were in the early days.
Yeah.
Those blogs were that was the pulse of the OSR. You would go there and you'd open up your blog list, and there's Joe, and there's Joe the lawyer, and then there's Grognardia, and there's
James
Jeff
M.
Wright.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, heck, even Joe the lawyer had a blog back then.
Yep, he did.
When he wasn't getting banned from Emerald, he was posting on his blog.
Yes. So I knew these guys. That's where I first met all these guys. Really, I knew them for their blogs before I met Eric. Also, Eric had a blog too, so I knew all these guys through the blogs before I met anybody at conventions. So
and that was before like FaceTime and cameras. So when you finally met people at conventions, that was when you were like, "That's who that guy is." I can't believe it, right?
Oh yeah, no.
And there was always the exactly what I expected. The oh hell, what? And somewhere in between, right? That was always the joy.
Because that was also the Google Plus heyday, right? That's when
Google came in shortly after our blog explosion.
Yeah.
And then and Google was great because people had circles. They weren't your friends. They were in your circle. So there wasn't this assumption that you had to be like intimate with people. It's just that you were interested in what they were doing. But then I think the downfall of Google was when they tried to make Google plus your blogger comment platform at the same time. And when he integrated, I did that for a day, and when I said, "Oh, I can revert," I'm leaving this.
done.
They wanted it was a shit show. Sorry,
it's all right. It is what it is.
Didn't they also try to compete with like Yahoo groups?
They were trying to compete with Facebook, and
I always had problems making Yahoo groups work. It was weird how that whole
Yahoo
thing.
groups were strange.
Yeah,
it really was. And then when what I thought was just the worst thing ever, they trashed all the communities. They just wiped them all off from the face of the earth.
Yeah,
and
With like very little notice.
So okay, no matter how I say this, it's going to just keep coming up the same way no matter how I turn it. So I'm sort of prepared, but there was an amazing Divine Right Yahoo group that when nobody else gave a shit about Divine Right, these were the people holding the torch in the darkness, and rules variants and upgrades on the rules, and the Rasmussen, or not Rasmussen, yeah, it was, or the two brothers were both sort of involved, and that's all gone. Like there was a decade's worth of material in that great group, and it all just evaporated. And
I remember going to all of the living Greyhawk Yahoo groups right before because they only gave you a couple of weeks.
That's right.
Before they shut them down. Yeah. And I joined and got every file off of every living Greyhawk group I could find. So I've got
smart.
quite a number of the adventures that are kind of like lost to the winds.
Yeah, it's just
Wow.
tragic, right? And it's the short-sightedness of it that I think really sort of haunts a lot of this. You know, we are very fortunate that all these blogs that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, you can go to the Internet Archive, and for the most part, you're going to be able to ping and get a lot of it. But for some of these that were in their enclosed ecosphere that you know, like
Yeah.
I'm going to date myself, but AOL groups, you know, there were some really key groups in role playing in the 90s, you
Yes.
know, 93 to 98 or whatever, but there's like a 5 to 7 year span of great material, interesting material, collecting, playing, developing worlds and so on, and it's all gone. And
There was a
you're,
ton
and
of
you're
there was a really active Greyhawk group on AOL.
Yes.
And
I
like
was part of
all
that.
of the Eric Mona was big on that.
Yeah.
Equander, I was big on that. There was a ton of just,
Mhm.
and it was the 2E era, so it was just really productive, and everybody was coming
Mhm.
up with stuff, and it's just.
I met some lifelong friends through that blog. I have a couple of friends I still know that I actually met through the Greyhawk blog on AOL. It was awesome. The group they had it going on for a while, AOL, because that's where I first just started buying, selling, and trading RPGs, because they had buy sell trade groups, and it was
Right.
great. And then the like as Joe said, the individual groups are really good. I belong to a really good Marvel Comics group. I was in a Star Trek group that was really good. I mean, it really had it going on for a while.
So I'll date myself. I started on CompuServe.
Oh God,
12.50 an hour dial-up.
This conversation's going in the wrong direction, because I was part of a bulletin board that I had to dial
CBSs, I
into with my
remember, yeah.
Apple II Plus, and you'd type frantically and updates and then log out and go back the next day, and you know.
Well, Joe,
Same.
it's great to go down memory lane with you, but we have you here for a reason. Are you gonna? Why don't you give us that ever loving, as Jim says, that ever loving elevator pitch? And
Well, here we go. My new book, Adventures Dark Deep Lite. This is an all-in-one book. It comes in nice and lean and mean,
Oops.
and it
I
is.
lost you, Joe, there for a
Hold
second.
on, Eric decided to close
Oh,
up.
yeah,
It
exactly.
went crazy on me. I was trying to.
It comes in at night. It's nice and mean and lean. It's got 5 core classes. It's got monsters. It's got magic. It's got everything you need. It's all in one. It's got a level cap at level 8, which is the sweet spot. So the spells go up to level 4. And it is basically Adventures Dark and Deep, which is 1E plus all the stuff that Gygax wanted to include but couldn't, ripped down to its absolute bare essentials. And it is a perfectly playable game in and of itself. You could play this for a one shot. You could play this for years. And if you want to, you could always add on other stuff from Adventures Dark and Deep or other OSR games, because it's compatible with almost every OSR game out there, because it's based on the 1E, core mechanics. And I saw there was a comment in there asking if I was going to talk about my the adventure engine. And what most people have overlooked is, if you look on the very cover page, this is indeed part of the adventure engine, which is my effort to bring the first edition core mechanics into a number of different genres. So we're going to have a core concept of the very basics for combat, and here's how you do classes, and here's how you do just a couple of really kernel things, and then people are going to take it into Wild West. I'm already talking to somebody who wants to do a Wild West game on it. You could do a post-apocalyptic science fantasy game. You could do hard sci-fi. You could do everything, but it's all going to be based on that very, very stripped down skeleton of 1E. And that's my pitch. This is
So
this is
okay, I'm going to
all-in-one.
I'm going to follow up, Joe. So, what is the attraction for a stripped down rule set versus, and not picking on anybody, but what is it that's so attractive about that versus something like, we'll say, other versions of Dungeons and Dragons up to including 5th and whatever the hell they're calling the thing after 5th, And then there's Pathfinder, where there's just an endless amount of tomes with rules for just about every. What is it that you think is the real appeal of a stripped down to the bone? Like, what I love about this is like, we got a guy on a bass, we got a guy on guitar, and we got a guy on drums, and that's all we need, folks. Get the hell out of the way.
It's approachable, right? Because the Adventures Dark and Deep core rules, you've seen them for phone books, and that's because they're very comprehensive. They've got a bunch of subclasses, and everybody has spells, and there's a zillion spells in there, and there's a zillion monsters, but it can be a little intimidating for somebody who's new. You get this, and you play it for a year, and then you're ready to step up if you want to. You don't have to, but it's there if you want to go to the next level and add in subclasses and higher level spells and a ton of more monsters. Or if you just want, let's say you want to play this with a mountebank. You buy this, you get the Adventures Dark and Deep Book of Lost Lore, and you add in the mountebank class. Everything's completely compatible. Or you want to add some monsters, you can get them out of the Tyrannic Tome, and throw them in there. They'll work fine. Or go get something out of the Fiend Folio. It'll work. But this is really approachable. It's intended to bring people in. It's intended because a lot of the OSR stuff is focused around basic, right? White Box, Labyrinth Lord. Basic is really a lot of what we see for the OSR in terms of the underlying structure. This is first edition based, which is a little different. Not all that different. They're still cross compatible. I grew up with 1E. So that's really where I feel most comfortable, and that's why I base this on 1E rather than basic. Plus, there's already a ton of basic-based games out there.
There are a couple. There are a couple.
A wee bit.
So,
does that answer your question?
Very good.
Well, first of all, James Spawn, I got the dice. Thank you. Golden Girls dice, because James and I have extremely unhealthy obsession with the Golden Girls, and I won't even go into it. And so he set these two. Whenever we see Golden Girls memorabilia, we like to ship the other person something. So it's unexplainable. It's not healthy, but thank you, James.
They keep the traditions alive, whatever they happen to be.
Well, Joe, that's
pretty from James. So, I mean,
this is a really cool idea, because obviously, as we're looking at the OSR and stuff going on now, everybody wants to simplify. Even as simple as the rules are now, they still want to simplify. And so I think that's a great idea, because it's weird how everything changed. Because first of all, the first games were really simple. Then we had this whole generation where it had to get really complicated, and then you had 2E with all the splat books, and you had 3E, and then it went to Pathfinder, which, as they call it, Mathfinder, which was just insane. Everything had every single thing you did had an ability for it. And it's now the pendulum is swinging back the other way. People are like, how can I simplify this stuff? I want to sit down at the table. I want to be able to roll up a character. I want to be able to walk in a dungeon in 15 minutes. What can I do to do that? Or less, Right. And so I think that really fits that paradigm, Joe. That's
well, I wanted to hit stuff, because not everybody likes retail like I do. I like a more robust game. Like first edition, where they have subsystems for everything. One of the things I loved about first edition, though, was you had all these subsystems, but they were all discrete, right? Because you could take out the pummeling and grappling rules and replace them with something else, and it wouldn't break anything over here. And that's what I loved about it. It really invites DM tinkering. And most of the 80s really fed into that with Dragon Magazine and White Dwarf and all, they played into that, and some, new classes and everything. As you get into later editions, you can still do that, but as they progress, they fight you harder and harder. Like with these unified mechanics, it's harder to change something over here because it might have an implication over here.
Sure. Something might get broken along the way.
Right.
Something might get broken along the way, and
exactly,
and
which is much harder to do in 1E.
So I think I'm going to go into the weeds a little early, so I apologize. But one of the things that I think, Joe, that and Mike and Eric can chime in and so on and so forth, right? What we see is the pendulum goes back and forth, right? And what I would say is that a stripped down rule set is one side of the sway of the pendulum, and something like Pathfinder is the other, right? That we go from rules light to I want every theoretical scenario, I want a rule for it that I can look up and argue with my game master.
Uh-huh.
And the pendulum swings back and forth generationally. Like it doesn't move quickly. It moves glacially if you're inside and you want the change. If you're outside, you can't believe how fast it's going, right? That it leaves you whiplash. And I have a story I have a story from the weekend that is absolutely spot on relevant to this. But I don't want to get into that just yet. But I think it's the lack when you see the request, the demand, when there's a push for I want rules for everything. I think that demonstrates what I would call the ebb of imagination. That people really are not wanting to think about creating a world. They're not looking at world building. They simply want to wrap themselves in this cozy blanket of something that's already been prepared so they don't have to think a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the pendulum swings the other way where, this is where we're all going to be teddy bears and we're going to be fighting to save the kindergarten. Right? Okay. And strangely enough, suddenly there's a Kickstarter and it's done $30,000 and you're like, where the hell did the teddy bear come from? And it's that kind of whipsaw effect. And it's really interesting. We've spent a couple of weeks now talking about OSR, and in just 20 years, look at how far the OSR has gone and look at how it's pitched right back. And I love that you are encapsulating exactly that, right? You were like, well, we have rules heavy, but we've also got rules light. And it's like first hit's free. Well, not free, but come on, shot.
It's interesting because I wouldn't even consider Adventures Dark and Deep rules heavy. It's
Sure.
just that there are a lot of variations. Like there's a zillion spells.
Yep.
And that's really why the books get really big, is because there's so many spell descriptions and so many magic items. But the mechanics themselves,
right,
really kind of short. It's just you can take those mechanics and just do all kinds of crazy stuff with them, and describing that crazy stuff is what gives you all the page count.
Right.
It's like having monsters. There's almost 1,000 monsters in the bestiary, but mechanically they all, they have a stat block and they all use the same, it's just more variations on the theme for the DM to use, or right. GM, I should say.
Well, and this is why games, and I'm going to do my best tonight not to name other games. That was one of my vows. Like I've already ruined it with Pathfinder and D&D, but I'm trying not to say some of the usual suspects. But that's why I think single rule book games, where there's just a single rule book, it covers exactly what you're talking about. But then where additional modules, books, expansions, campaigns, they add what I would call the flavor spells or the flavor monsters, or, okay, in this ecosphere, we suddenly have the cyborg Yeti, and we explain why we have cyborg Yetis in the adventure. But in this, here's the stat block for cyborg Yetis, and you can go with it and do what you want. But we're not going to put it in our main rule book because the circumstances are so infinitesimally small that you'll run into this monster. We're only putting it in the adventure.
Which is kind of what you saw with books like Fiend Folio and Monster Manual 2. Right? Yeah. They took all the specialty monsters out of the modules.
Yes.
Monsters that were invented for a particular thing.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden they became standard monsters that you can find anywhere.
Yes. Veggie
I'm thinking like demi-liches. Demi-liches, Sararak was a particular singular thing in Tomb of Horrors. But once he made it into one of the standard monster books, then they proliferated.
Yes.
And in a way, it kind of cheapened it.
It's like a bad rash, right? You've opened the door and yes, how do you yes.
It worries me that that's your go-to analogy there.
Well, it's true, but I'm it's like Vegapygmies. Vegapygmies served a great purpose in S3. But okay, so Mike, you can try to help me remember. There is a novel from about 20 odd years ago where there's a boat filming the equivalent of Survivor on the Sea. And they come upon an island that's uncharted, and they stop on the beach, and all the vapid pretty people get out to do stuff, and the live camera crews are there, and a god awful monster comes out of the jungle and eats most of them, and they manage to, like, a survivor gets back to the boat, but the footage is horrific and live. And so it turns out that this is an ecosystem that has been cut off from the rest of the world for 1 million years. And the ecosystem is constantly evolving these more and deadlier threats. And the implication is, dear God, if any part of this ecosystem gets out, the rest of the world is not prepared for how aggressive this is, from the insects to the animals, et cetera, et cetera. And vegapygmies are that same cataclysmic problem, right? Because vegapygmies spread by spores, and if this gets out of the starship, like, half the Flyness is going up in a mushroom cloud, literally. And that's why when I saw vegapygmies in the monster manual as a kid, I was like, there's no way they'll break they're going to multiply faster than kobolds, and they're going to be a problem, right? I just don't take your peanut butter and stick it in my applesauce, kid. Like, knock it off. But anyway, they don't listen to me. Sorry.
Never do.
They never.
Strongly worded letter to Dragon Magazine to come.
That's right. Curse you and your expansive use of vegapygmies. Damn it. I'm sure it was Cask.
My example from S3 though is the wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yes. Yes.
It's obviously an alien monster. Mm-hmm. And then it's in the monster manual too, and all of a sudden it's just
everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. And how do you put it back in the box?
It doesn't have to be, it loses its specialness when it's taken out of that. And then there's some gimmick monsters like the Gumbado and the Fiend Folio.
Yeah.
It's this skull atop this thing that sits in and then it jumps out at you. It's completely a gimmick. And it obviously worked fine in one dungeon that some guy in Britain made when he was 14.
Right.
But then once it's in the Fiend Folio, DMs have to kind of go out of their way to figure out scenarios in which it would actually be useful.
Well, and again, right, the worst part is that, and I think this is one of the reasons why the Fiend Folio didn't do well, right, is that the monster manual was sort of the generic pantheon of things that you're going to find in the environment. But every monster manual that comes after that, you're getting into a more and more niche ecosystem, right? And there are so many great things in the monster manual. One of the things I came across this past week was a discussion about the Sahagin. That if you look at the Sahagin as they're described in the monster manual, there is so much here that you could build on and do with. And Mike and I were talking a few weeks ago about the threat from the sea. WotC did a series of things in 2000. There was a trilogy and a collection of short stories and a tie-in module, and it gave a really great teeth, pardon the pun, tooth and claw to the Sahagin as a threat, as a problem, and how they could impact, and so on and so forth. And you didn't need, a lot. Monster Manual 2, okay. Fiend Folio, right? The longer they go, the stranger they get.
It didn't help that Ed Greenwood gave it pretty much a scathing review when they published it in Dragon.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I never did understand why that managed to get in, but
well, they did too. They did one where he didn't like it, and they did another one where somebody else would like it. So they I think they were trying to be.
Your magazine that sells products shouldn't be your point counterpoint argument, right? You shouldn't have Dan Aykroyd saying, "Ed, you ignorant slut." Sorry, Mike is stunned. Mike is just.
No, I'm just taking this all in. I'm just taking it all in.
Yeah. Go.
No, I'm just saying I'm getting IMs from people, so I'm going to try to collate it all and throw it out at Joe in a little bit once I get all.
No, I
see some of the comments. Yeah,
I think the pendulum swings, right, and I think you're spot on to have a really, really rules light product, because dip your toe in, and if you like the pool, then you can dive right in. And
that's the idea. It wasn't even a question of writing new material. It was a question of, and I agonized about this with Eric in IMs on Facebook. It's like I keep taking stuff out, and it's still 300 pages.
Right.
It's a question of how much can I take out and still leave it as a playable game.
Right.
Which also means that you can instantly go from that to the core rules because you're playing the same game, just a subset of it.
And so what do you feel, you're doing the heavy editing, right? You've got the red pen and you're I got to cut this out. I got to cut this out. But what do you feel really speaks to the identity of the rule set? Is there a particular mechanic? I guess I'm sort of asking you, Joe, is there something where you're like, no, that's part of what this is. This is at the heart of its DNA.
Yes. In fact, well, there are two things, one of which didn't make the cut. Because Adventures Dark and Deep has a skill system based on the one that Gary wrote for Castles and Crusades. You spend XP to get skills, which I thought was a brilliant innovation. And if he had brought it in the 80s, it would have taken the game in a completely new direction. It's really, really works well. But in terms of page count, I just couldn't justify it.
Right.
So that was one that I regretted not being able to keep. The one that I did keep, that I do think really differentiates Adventures Dark and Deep from just 1E, is the Bard class. Because the Bard class uses it's not like the Bard out of 1E at all. It's not like, it's part thief and it's part magic user and it's part part druid and part fighter. It's its own thing. It does cast spells, but it's also got a non-magic mechanic called verbal paddle, where you can use your charisma to influence other creatures, other people who either like you or don't like you or do things, or you can convince them not to like this person. There's a whole mechanic around it, and that to me really differentiates this from 1E, because it's something you don't see in old school D&D. And it's something that in the core rules I've used in a bunch of different places. The Jester has a variation of it, the Skald has a variation of it, but the Bard is where it starts. And I think by having that kind of the whole point of a Bard is you are performing, you are influencing, you are either misdirecting or you're convincing. I think having that in there really makes the Bard a different and unique enough character class to justify including it.
Joe, why do so many people have a hard time with the Bard? I mean, it doesn't seem like it should. When we play, we still do 2E, and we use the second edition version with some tweaks, but it doesn't really feel right even then. Why do people have such a hard time making that a character class?
I don't know. I mean, there was a character class in Dragon 56, with pink border and Phil and Dixie with the snowman.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a great self-contained Bard class. I think what a lot of people have an issue with is most Bard classes don't feel different enough, right? They're just another kind of magic user. Because they're bards and they sing, but they just cast spells. And I think that's part of the problem, is because you could just take most Bard classes out there and just roll their spells into magic users and maybe make a subclass, and that would be sufficient.
Well, they should
That's
have
why I wanted to do something really
like
different.
Music type spells, or I have a rule in my campaign where every level the Bard has to compose a work, whether it be musical or written, and then we have like a thing, you roll a dice, see how famous that work becomes, and sometimes it doesn't, and then sometimes you're in a different town, you walk in and somebody's performing, you're like, I made the big time, this guy's doing my song, this is awesome. So we threw that in there because it makes it feel more like you're a performer rather than, like you said, just like you're a guy that throws spells and you can pick a lock and and
exactly.
blah blah blah.
And I think that's part of the problem, and that's really what I was trying to address in my Bard class, is that they're not thieves. There's no thief abilities in there. You're your own thing, and I wanted to make that really stand out.
Well, now I got to check it out because I want to see what you did with the Bard. So I think I'm in for this now.
I think my scar. You say Bard, and I shiver in terror, and I think part of it is a mix of how poorly the Bard has been executed, right? Because when you hear Bard, I think sort of a wandering performer / I'll say minstrel, but that's not really a good fit.
Wandering minstrel eye. Yeah.
Yes, and I, I think when Mike was talking, the first thing I thought of was The Witcher, where the guy comes into a town and he's heard his song and he's like, oh my god, right? Like, okay, but the problem is that most of the time when you have somebody who's like, I want to play a bard, right? They believe they are Robert Plant / Jim Morrison, and yea, verily, they shall walk in with their dreamy chest hair and their lute, and it's just charisma check, and all goes well. And I don't think of that as role playing so much as it's impossible wish fulfillment, and I just got nothing right.
And I think a big part of that is.
Go ahead, Joe.
I think a big part of that is the bard that we saw in the D&D movie that came out recently.
Yes,
where that's pretty much what he does. He's just kind of like an illusionist.
Yeah,
and there's also the bard. What's the Critical Role cartoon? What was it called?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the Critical Role cartoon. There's the bard. Yeah, I know exactly.
There's that bard character in there,
right?
And much as I enjoyed the show, Acquisitions Incorporated, wasn't it? No, that's a different thing. But much as I enjoyed the show, he was annoying, and it was, and I think that's coloring people's impressions of what bards are. Is that they're always these egotistical.
I mean, I love you, Joe, but you're never going to get me into the pro bard camp. I'm going to tell you right now, if I have to put up with bards, then I also should have to put up with circus magicians, right? That like randomly pull coins out of people's ears or manage to pull a rabbit out of the hat.
The jester, my jester class does that because they have sleight of hand.
Yes, sleight of hand, not magic. Remember, I'm going to make a fireball, but more like catch me if you can, or catch me if you can with the Four Horsemen, right? Where it's just one series of intricate traps, mechanical stuff, and so on and so forth.
And that's part of what my bard is. Those verbal patter skills are not magical, and that's really what I wanted to emphasize: is that it's not just a magical class. The bard can do stuff that relies on his own innate skills and persuasiveness and charisma. I wanted to make charisma not be a dumb stat, and when you have a bard, that's the case. And in the core rules, one thing along those same lines, which doesn't apply here because it's not in the light rules, but higher your charisma, the more you can sell treasure for. So like if you get a crystal vase or something and you bring it back to the city, if you're trying to sell it and the percentage of the total value you get for it goes up with a higher charisma.
That's actually pretty good.
Well, but and I'm going to say this, right, and okay, two people in two different areas can have a great idea at the same time, right? But this is the root of the talking skill, the speech skill in Fallout, right? That the higher points you have in this, the more success you can have in conversations and persuasion and so on. And seeing that as a mechanic in a role-playing game makes perfect sense. But this is why, we always talk about what's a role-playing game that isn't a role-playing game, but you think is a great role-playing game. And my vote for that is it's harder to find now than it was. But as we know, the publishing industry has moved away from those god-awful, gigantic video game hint guides, the guide to whatever.
Yeah.
And so most used video game stores will have a rack with a bunch of these, or Half Price Books always has a few shelves of this stuff and so on. And the thing that I always say is an amazing RPG that wasn't sold as an RPG, but literally you could pick this up and run it as an RPG, is the Fallout 3 guide. It's about as thick as an old phone book. If you get the Game of the Year edition, it's got all the expansions and so on, but everything's stat blocked. Everything is stat blocked, and it's astounding the level of detail. It's one of the last sort of hurrahs of video game guides, but it is a spectacular RPG disguised as a video game guide. And if you wanted to run a Fallout 3 RPG, you could make up whatever light rule system you wanted or plug something into it, but you could have a field day using that book. And there's a lot like the Skyrim. There's a Skyrim guide that's equally from the same folks from Prima Publishing, and I like that. I like these kind of off the chart. But the Bard class, you lost me. I love you, Joe, but no.
Greg Christopher, of course, Greg Christopher has a great Shadowrim bash. It's a Shadow Sun. No. Shadow Sun, right? Is that Sky? What is this guy? Shadowrim. That's it, right? That's his Shadow Dark / Skyrim. And that's what those are the two games. If I'm looking at games, Fallout and Fallout and Skyrim are the two games I always thought that those would have been really, really great role-playing games. Just as without the video game at all, if you'd have made a role-playing game based in both those worlds. And there is a Fallout RPG, and I've known people that play it. They have a lot of fun with it. They have a ton of fun with it. But it surprises me it wasn't developed earlier and didn't become more popular.
No, I don't understand that either. That's somebody in licensing at Bethesda just being too lazy to make free money.
And I don't. They had a big. So I play Fallout 76 online still. It's been out for about 7-8 years now, and it kind of it rolled along. It was going along, and they had promised support for 10 years going along. But when the Netflix show came out 2 years ago, it just shot up in popularity. All of a sudden, all the servers are full, packed full of people that want to do what's going on in the show. And yeah, you're right, Jim. That was just a failure of marketing to not get something like that out earlier and say, look, this is a really cool world. It's been around for 25 years now. There's there's a lot of people that play Fallout that are totally into the lore. I mean, they could tell you what every vault was, every creature, every character. And so that was always seemed like a real big failure of just vision, which, we of course we've seen many a time in our exploration of the hobby. And I think Skyrim's been out for over 10 years now. And it's never really developed an official. I mean, there's a role playing game for Skyrim too, but I don't really know anybody that plays it. It's out there. It's there.
I can't either. And come on, right? I think again, this is the entrepreneurial creative spirit. If you can't go into a half price books, get a copy of the Fallout 3 Game of the Year guide and run a role playing game out of it. I mean, literally, I could come up with what to roll the dice on, because everything else is statted, right? And you've got the giant map, so you can throw that behind a screen and you can go. When they're in an area, there's keyed encounters, blah, 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 blah. Like this would be a no-brainer. And
by the way, you can get a Fallout 3 Game of the Year guide, $20 on eBay. It's absolutely affordable. Absolutely affordable.
Right. So, and that's but getting back, so Joe, what's your mark of success for this book? Like, what are you going to be like? And we're there. Like, what's your internal goal for that?
I don't really have like a number of books I want to sell. I mean, I would love it if it eventually hits gold on drive-through.
Yep.
But that's it's already copper, so it's on its way. But I wanted to give something that relative newcomers could get and not be overwhelmed by 1,000 pages of rules. That's really the goal, is to just get new people into play the game. Because I would hope that my love of 1E based games is obvious. And the more people,
I don't think you have to worry, Joe. I think it's obvious. I'm throwing that out there.
I know it's subtle. Good. It's subtle, but I gotta, I want to be able to give people another on ramp into old school games and 1E games, and that's my goal.
So
it's not so much books sold as people in.
I watched our episode the last time you were on, and I was thinking about this. One of the things that we talk about, and I think the hobby as a whole is pretty crap about, is creating the next generation of gamers, right? So we talk about what we want to see the Dungeons and Dragons basic set be, right? So very impressed that they put B2 back in it. Very surprised, but I know having raised a boy who is now away at university and so on and so forth, I remember what he responded to and what he didn't respond to. And I remember, he played in a Pathfinder demo game and had a great time because he had a great person running the game, and he got a neat character, and frankly, it was kill monsters, get treasure. But I look at so much of the hobby, and I look at so much of all the different publishers and all the ones we normally name, right? And very few of them have a program to try to have more people coming in and do demo games. Very few of them have products that are aligned with that. Like, here's your, hey kid, first hit's free. Here's a 16-page booklet. It shows you the scope of how to get a character. It's got a sample module in the back. And if you like more, go to this website, right? And register, and we'll put you on the mailing list. I see very little of that in the hobby. And that's at every imaginable level, from the biggest players in the space to the guy going to Kinko's and printing a few fanzines. And it's everywhere in between. What do you think? What do you think people could be doing better to get more new people into the hobby?
Well, I don't know if I'm on the right track, but there is something I'm doing with this book that I've never done before.
Okay.
It's a complete experiment. And Eric, you might know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I know.
Mhm.
I don't want to steal your thunder, but, and by the way, I do have it queued up if I need to. I think, but you currently
Well,
have
I
it.
mean, I'm
But
good with it if you
you
want
have
to,
the
but
original, so
well, I'm running ads on television. I actually put to I wrote a script. I got a producer to do it. We got, it's not Hollywood, but it's sufficient. And it's advertising to bring people into Adventures Dark and Deep. And it's right now running on Paramount Plus.
And
And it's going to run on YouTube. It's going to run on Facebook. I'm trying to make a push to bring people into old school gaming through Adventures Dark and Deep. And
so
I don't know if it's going to work, but
So
I'm
I'm
willing to
very
put a little money
interested.
into it to see.
When have they started pushing those out yet?
Yeah, they started on Monday
And
on
so,
Paramount Plus.
in looking at your website traffic and so on, do you see, like, are you seeing an impact? Are you seeing, like, hey, suddenly I got a spike of, like, hey, there's
I
three
can
guys in
track how many
Schenectady.
people are coming in through that, and it's definitely it's making an impact. I've only gone in on a little bit relatively budget wise,
Sure.
but if it continues to bring in sales, then the budget's going to go up, and the more budget, the more people see the ad.
Well, I mean, I would counsel, Joe, that you have to be very careful about this, right? Because, and I'm going to say this, advertising is like crack, right? Because you get some results, but you have to keep getting money to get more results. And it's just this terrible, never-ending cycle of.
Believe me, I am very conservative when it comes to the money
Right.
coming in and out of BRW.
And so, do you have them going to a different website that then redirects? How are you measuring your traffic where you can say that's a commercial guy, or that
There's a
woman
special
saw my
landing
commercial?
page. I have a URL at the end of the commercial, and there's a special landing page
Yep.
that takes you to something. It's a page on the BRW site,
Right.
but it's a landing page that features the light rules, and then underneath it has the core rules. It
Sure.
brings everybody in, but it's putting the light rules front and center when you land on that page. And I can, because it's on its own page and because it's a redirect, I know how many people are coming in through that.
Easy to track. That's fabulous. I'm gonna say this. This is like the most exciting thing I've heard in months from people on the show talking about, hey, I've got a project and this is what I'm doing. Like, I love this because this is actually, you know what? There's normies out there, and I have to find them, and I have to hit them in the head with Adventures Dark. Yes, I think that's
it's only been 4 days, or 3 days. It's only been on for 3 days. So once I have some actual stats,
sure.
I will probably make those more public. But I'm seeing results.
And then the next question I have then, Joe, is the most important question of all, are they ordering after they've come to the page?
That's a tougher one to judge
Sure.
because I don't have a way of measuring click through
Yep.
from that specifically. I
Yep.
can only measure people who are actually going to the page. So, it's not I don't have perfect tracking,
Sure.
but I can kind of figure based on, how many hits I'm getting on the page and
Yep.
how many are, and I can guesstimate.
Right.
But I don't have perfect tracking on the click through to drive through.
But you're still seeing something,
Yes.
which, I can tell you, I've watched Games Workshop US poured money into doing a couple of live commercials and then manned up the customer service 800 or the mail order 800 number, and we got nothing. We got absolutely nothing because the guy in charge of US sales at the time went with what his gut was, and he was hopelessly off base. He
Eric,
went
you want to play it?
with lots of eyeballs.
You only have the 30 seconds.
I've got
up, right?
3 30-second spots and a 1 60-second spot. The 30-second spots are the ones that are going up.
All right.
Eric, play one. Play the first one.
Yep.
Okay.
Just to give out an idea.
Hold on. Let me bring up. The wrong
Uh-oh. It's
Eric
Eric and versus
is-
technology.
Hopefully we won't all get shut off or
No,
anything.
I-
Here we go.
No. Nothing like that.
He claims.
Okay.
He's got it. There, he's got it.
I've
A
got it.
ghoul leaps out and attacks you. What do?
I use my staff of thunder and lightning and blast it. Do thy worst, freak.
Explore the role-playing game where fantasy comes to life with magic, monsters, and endless options. Adventures Dark and Deep. Available now at adventuresdarkanddeep.com.
I love the voice, Joe.
I actually know the guy. The guy used to work at a music store, and he taught my son how to play drums, and now he's a professional voiceover guy.
That's
that commercial's
awesome.
great. It is. It's great.
You like it?
That's
You
just
like
the
it?
best, right? And there's just enough. There's just enough of a hint of mazes and monsters to make me a little nervous, but you managed to stick the landing, right? So I'm like, okay, that's excellent.
Thank you. I wrote it, and then the director, he changed things all around, but I
Sure.
think he made it much better than my original. But I'm really pleased with the way it came out.
Oh, it's
And like I said, there's
fun.
2 others
And
that are also running.
I love the bloodied lip
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the wizard. So that little touch alone is worth the price of
That's right,
admission.
Sparkle Mage Boy. I don't know how to tell you this, but stay in the back of the party.
Yeah, throw your daggers and Molotov cocktails.
That's
Don't
right.
don't mix it up. You shouldn't be in a fist fight.
I have so many flasks of oil. Sorry,
What am I
That's-
supposed to do when I cast my 1 spell a day?
I don't know. That's excellent,
But,
Joe. That's like, and
yeah.
again, right? You're at least trying something.
Right. It's a complete experiment. If it
Sure.
flops, I've spent $1,000.
And so, do you actually have local cable access where you are? Is there something
this is
where you
actually
could do a
something that-
show?
No, this is actually something that Paramount Plus does through their streaming service. You upload the stuff, you set a budget, and you can set what kind of shows it goes on, like entertainment or sports or
Sure.
news. And you set the budget, you set a time frame, and you let it go, and you get X number of impressions per dollar. That's what
Wow.
inspired me to make the commercial in the first place. I saw an ad for them selling their ad space, and it's like you can go in
Wow.
with a shoestring budget. All you
That's
need is the ad.
really interesting.
Shoestring. Oh, that's our middle name. Shoestring budget. Eric, we need to do one for
Exactly.
talking crit.
Right. I don't need $10,000 to sink into this.
Right.
The ad cost me $1,200, and I put in a little bit, for the initial buy on Paramount Plus, and if it pays out, I'll throw in a little more and see if it if it keeps getting hits.
This is just fascinating to me. This is one of the first things. Again, this is the first thing I've heard of in months, where really and truly, like, this is a groundbreaking effort that you should be applauded for wholeheartedly. I'm really very impressed, Joe. Like, I don't say that lightly.
Well, I appreciate it. Even if it's a flop, we've learned something.
No, but I don't think it's a flop simply because we're in a completely different space than we were 25, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, right? Where you can do such ruthlessly targeted advertising that you can put it on and just shows you want and so on and so forth. And you've got a good shot. Like, we know our people, right? If I look at Paramount, like, what are they going to watch? Well, you know, you have a commercial for the people who are all, you know, you have a commercial for the muggles and you have a commercial for the people who aren't. And the muggles are all watching Landman, right? They're watching Landman. Like, everybody's watching Landman. And that's where you put the muggle commercial. And then, you know, Paramount Plus, Strange New Worlds, drop the commercial for the people who are part of the hobby in Strange New Worlds.
They don't let you target it that closely. It's just broad categories.
Sure.
But I'm also going to be doing it through Google Ads on YouTube, you know, so that lets you micro target a lot more.
Yep.
But, you know, like I say, it's a complete experiment. I
But
just
it's
wanted.
fun.
Why
Right?
not?
It's
I think
fun.
it's great. I liked it. I thought that was better than the dumb D&D commercials used to run in the 80s. Those were terrible. That's better than that.
Oh my God.
This is good stuff, man.
And again, you're trying something, right? It may not go exactly the way you want, but you don't give a shit. You're at least trying something where everybody else is just whining on the sidelines.
And what have I lost?
That's right.
A couple grand.
That's right. And if you sell $3,000 worth of product, you'll cover your costs and then some, and you'll pull ahead.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, you know, I wanted to try it. As soon as I saw that Paramount Plus thing, I was like, how do I take advantage of this?
That's
Because
right.
you can literally throw $500 at it and get ads up on TV. Okay.
Sure.
How can you not?
And so were you pretty pleased at your production costs for the commercial? Was that something where you were like, but it turned out okay?
Yeah, I mean, the director who did it is a friend of my son's. They both went to the same college together doing a film. My son majored in lighting design.
Yep.
This guy Andrew majored in filmmaking, and you know, it was, like I say, a shoestring budget.
Sure. But it doesn't need to be anything else. You know, you don't need the big elaborate visuals. And if anything, the cut, the edit, where he spends with his staff and it goes straight to the book, it's as clear as a bell, right?
Yeah.
I just love that. I love simplicity.
He really knocked it out of the park. And we did a live stream on Sunday, and he was my first guest on it. And he stayed for 45 minutes. People were, pitching him questions, and he was great.
And I think another hats off to you. You did not lean towards bikini chainmail, and for that alone, I mean, you resisted the black hole of temptation of I could lean into cheesecake, and you did not. And good for you.
The second one has, a female is the character that switches into her character, and yeah, she's wearing just regular.
She's dressed. That's what you're trying to say.
Yes.
She's dressed. Yes. That's fabulous. No,
I'm thinking a commercial for North Texas.
Okay.
I'll see if Rob's good. He's got his Speedo ready, and my brother
and you in the devil costume,
and we're the devil costume. Have the devil.
It's all coming together.
I think. And Jim. I won't say any more except that Jim and Mark can reprise their parts from a few years ago, and I think
you banned us. You banned us, and I'm not taking it back. I'm sorry, I'm not doing this.
Mr. Krabs can pop in.
But it would be great because then it could be like,
did you? There would be the biggest question mark in the world over every human's head that saw that. If we had all those people I just mentioned and Mr. Krabs, and we said go and had a commercial, we'd be like, what the hell goes on at that convention? And I've got to buy a ticket to go there now. I got
I've actually had another publisher approach me and ask if he could get in touch with the director, so he might try one.
That's
very
nice.
cool.
So I am happy to help any other publishers who want to go this route. I am happy. I'm always happy.
I'm afraid that before this is over, we're going to see Talanian in a fur bikini with a sword,
Oh,
and it's going to be
Raggy.
like
James
no.
Raggy doing a whole commercial on the bearskin rug.
hello. I'm the
Ah.
RPG you wish you
No,
could
no,
be.
he'll just
Laying in the
he'll have his
snow.
hands
Ever
placed
hear of
strategically
Lamentations
above
of the Flame
in the snow,
Princess?
yes.
That's right. It's going to be like a really bad. It'll be James laying on a shag carpet with a 70s fondue pot, and he's going to be like, "Would you like to role play the way your grandparents role played, but they were afraid to tell you about? Now you can try Lamentations of the Flame Princess, right?"
And then he
he'll have
lights the fondue pot.
He likes
He likes the sterno under the fondue pot.
That's right.
Oh my god!
You know,
Oh
and
my
the music behind him is just going to be like that bass line from those movies, right? It's just going to be brown chicken, brown cow, brown chicken, brown cow. Wow.
Joe,
Fugly, don't take Bad Mike too seriously. If you did that commercial, you'd probably lose 250 regulars, gain about 500.
yeah,
transients,
I just said we don't need any tourists.
and furries.
We don't need more tourists in North Texas. We would not ever. We don't even advertise anymore. We don't need to advertise. Joe, I want to dig us out of this hole. God help us, because I have images of Raggy now that I will have nightmares about for the next week. So look, I was going to ask you about some of your older stuff. I was going through a box the other day, and I started flipping through Castles of the Mad Archmage. Do you ever have any plans to do another reprint of that? Do an update?
Well, I mean, I've got like 3 different side levels in various stages of completion on my hard drive. It's just a question of time, and I've got all these other projects going on. But yeah, eventually, I'd love to do some more side levels.
I mean,
But I think the
I'm
core levels as they were published last time is it.
I loved it, but the production was low. It wasn't up to what you do now.
No, Mike, you missed the second.
Yeah, you-
I
Did you-
remember. No, I have the second edition too. That's true. I just forgot that when I said that. But I think that's a thing that that's kind of like a tent pole franchise. You have the Castle of Mad Archmage, like you said, Joe. Every few years, let's release a couple of side levels, a hidden level, stuff like that. I think that would be a really good idea to do something like that. And just have kind of an annual, or maybe an annual release even.
I'm kind of ambivalent about it at the moment because it was originally made to finish Troll Lord's Castle Zagig, and now they're doing it. So I'm a little ambivalent about it, but I've still got ideas for a bunch of levels, so eventually they'll come out.
I think Mega Dungeons. You know what? There's never going to be too many Mega Dungeons. I think you can go with Mega Dungeons forever, even after Troll Lord's Castle's a gig, and there's a lot of questions about that. What's going to happen with that? And I'm not gonna say anything, but it's just I don't know. We don't know about that yet. But Castle of Mad Archmage is here. It's done. It's there. It's a great Mega Dungeon. Like I said, I just think that more Mega Dungeons the better.
I can't agree more.
Well, and I think we're in the Mega Dungeon drought right now. I can't think of a Mega Dungeon that has caught my attention in the last 5 or 6 years. And I don't mean that as a slight against anybody's Mega Dungeon. So if you have a Mega Dungeon and it has escaped my attention, I can assure you it's not your fault. It's all mine. But I can't think of anything that really has caught fire where everybody's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. There have been Mega Dungeons in the past that did not do well. There have been Mega Dungeons that did do well. But I don't think we have seen. I mean, Mike, Eric, what's a Mega Dungeon in the last 5 years that that comes to mind that was a big hit and a critical hit?
I like Greg Gillespie stuff, but I know he calls them Mega Dungeons, but they're not technically Mega Dungeons. The way we look at
They're not.
So I look at Greg's stuff. I think it's great, and Greg, love you if you're watching this, but technically those are not what I would consider "quote unquote" a Mega Dungeon. But you're right, because
Right.
for a while we had them. We had Memorial Tomb. We were just like, they were all just popping out
They were
here and there.
cranking
left
them
and
out.
right. Yeah,
And Memorial Tomb came out in the last 5 years, but it funded like 10 years ago.
yeah.
So-
Yeah, it took a while to get out of the game.
Eric, don't say the quiet part out loud.
But yeah, that's.
I'm sorry.
And what's interesting is, in the philosophy of gaming, and game theory has changed in the last, because the first mega dungeons were just it's a bunch of random stuff, right? With Teagle Manor type things, where there's orcs in one room, and here's a goblin, here's a Balrog, and there's no rhyme reason.
There's no rhyme or reason. It's just I sat down with the manual and I populated
rolled random towners.
A fun house dungeon. That you call that a funhouse dungeon, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they got a little more philosophical. Then you had stuff like, okay, we're going to have a theme, and but yeah, that they kind of dropped off. I think everybody thought, well, that's kind of played out. Let's move along. But yeah, I'll tell you what, mega dungeons always seem to sell well, and people always seem to be interested. And you go to Reddit groups or Facebook groups or whatever. People are like, hey, I'm thinking about a mega dungeon. Give me some suggestions. And so people are always asking about them. I think people.
Well, Matt Archmage is a steady seller.
That's good.
Let me
awesome.
find something real quick. Give me just a second. I'm going to find something real quick.
He's going to go into his mega dungeon. He's got it's behind his office.
Well,
He has one.
if you look over my virtual shoulder, you have the halls of Arden Vool.
Oh, that is if that wasn't the last 5 years though, right? It's been a little longer than that.
No, that had to
That
be
was
around-
Coming out with a
that
new
was
version
really
of World's
good.
Largest Dungeon too. I think I read that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Joe, the problem with that dungeon was it was a stunt. They wanted to put every single monster in the monster manual in a dungeon, and I've tried to get through the whole thing, and I've read through it. It's awful. It's just effing awful. It's so bad. It was just a stunt to get every monster in the monster manual in there, and so they'll probably do okay. Their Kickstarter will probably do fine, but that's low quality mega dungeon there. World's.
Yeah, my second edition of Matt Archmage, the Kickstarter, did great. So that was heartening.
I tried to find it. I didn't see it. So in 1981 or 82, after the Gnomes book was published, that sort of was the peel back and look at the lives of gnomes. That was a big bestseller, and there was a rush to market for other things. And there's a book called The Kingdom of the Dwarves, where a guy digging in a garden in England comes across the entrance to a giant dwarven hold. And the whole book is about the exploration, and they only have a limited amount of time to explore what's there. And it's a really, really interesting, it's the root of a great mega dungeon. I was trying to find my copy here. But the hook for a mega dungeon, the hook is what sells the mega dungeon, right? That one of the interesting things about Waterdeep is that it's built on top of this ridiculous mega dungeon. Think of all the ones that have had some success, but there's always a root of why you would want to get involved and so on. And I sort of like the idea of a mega dungeon that nobody knows about, but that suddenly there's something that happens, there's an earthquake, whatever, and suddenly an entrance is revealed, and now it's the party's responsibility to go in and try to scope this out, and it's a well-funded effort to make this happen and so on. But we don't see that. For the most part, they're sort of, here, plop this down in your campaign world, and okay, I understand that, because you want to make it easy as a low, you want no barriers to entry, so it's easy for somebody to integrate it in their campaign. But it's the flavor that sells it. We've talked before on the show about Grognardia's, James's mega dungeon, and that it was just empty. it was empty, and it can't be empty. It has to have, Joe, you really hit the nail on the head. Right? You don't want a mega dungeon that's just like a sideshow circus, right? Where Tiamat's in the room next to the kobolds.
In a 10 by 10 room.
Yes. You want something that there's sense. You want something where there's, that this has happened and this has happened and these things have come together and so on and so forth. You want that in a mega dungeon, and I just don't see that. I just don't see that very often, and most of the time, I have been so sorely disappointed by mega dungeons in the last 20 years. That's why I don't buy them. I wait for a used copy, or I really, really wait for the reviews to come in. God, everybody got quiet again.
I actually did that thing where you're saying about, the entrance suddenly opens up. I actually did that in a campaign while I was in college, and players go in, they muck around in the mega dungeon, they come out again, and then after a couple of weeks, somebody's opened up an inn.
Yes.
At the base of the dungeon, and then a few more weeks go by, and then it's turning into this little village because there's lots of adventurers going in. So this whole infrastructure starts growing around the mega dungeon.
Yes. Well, that's the
players thought they had all themselves. Everybody knows me.
Well, that's the spin on it. That's the way to get into whatever the mega dungeon is underwater deep. There's now an inn over one of the entrances, and they lower the party in.
Yawning portal,
yeah. See you later, buddy. Have a great time. Good luck with that. Right, if you find work, and you're not going to find work.
I actually had a 2.5 year campaign in Undermountain, and group had a blast. It was a rotating group of probably about 15 players that weren't there all at the same time, obviously, but whoever showed up on Tuesday night would load up their characters and roll onto the dungeon. They had an absolute blast. I mean, if you do a mega dungeon right, you should have adventures for years. You should never have a problem, Well,
Eric, you ran Mad Archmage for a while, didn't you?
Yeah. I ran that with Joe the Lawyer, Tim Shorts, I think Doug Cole, a few of those guys. It was the Friday Night Irregulars, and they had a blast. And again, it was a funhouse dungeon. So you had your work crews that you would occasionally encounter that were upgrading or repairing a part of the
Greyhawk Construction Company.
That's right.
Yeah, but I was using a VTT, and you didn't have VTT maps. So at best, I would have to. There were sloping passages, so I would get the. Oh, look, underground, 15 degree slope. I'm like, shut the fuck up.
It was actually thanks to you specifically because you said that I included VTT friendly maps in the new version.
Oh wow!
You were the reason I did that.
We had fun with it. Nobody was complaining about the adventure itself. Everybody was having a good time. They were enjoying it. They were looking forward to it. It ran until my hours at work got changed, until I was working 4 to 12.
And I run it at cons. At Wizard Con, I ran it, and my God, the guys at that table had such a. We were getting looks from the other tables because.
When you get stink eye from other tables, you're having a good time.
Yeah. Oh, and they were going to the bar and bringing me beer, and it was a blast. And every time I run it, people really seem to enjoy it. So,
awesome.
I will humbly plug my own product. But yeah, there's more stuff to come for Mad Archmage.
Well, good.
Well, Joe,
let me on the subject of dungeons. Let me real quick. Because in the book, in the back of the book, I put in a sample dungeon, and it's just a quick little thing. But the reason I did it was to include tips on how to make dungeons, like explaining how the secret door, why is the pit trap here as opposed to here, and you have to have a way around things, and just the basics of dungeon design, because a lot of people today aren't really used to dungeon crawls, especially they're not used to designing them. And when my editor had it, and she wrote back to me and said, I wish I had this 15 years ago when I was first starting to play. Because it's just what you and I might think is just these obvious things, because we've learned them over the last 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
That people today, they don't know it. It's not spelled out for them. So I wrote the sample dungeon specifically to give those tips on how to create a dungeon. And for me, that's my favorite part of the book, because that's the on ramp into an older school way of play.
Well, maybe we should think about, there's a lot of, I mean, look, just right here, the four of us, there's a ton of knowledge here. And I think that's one thing that's overlooked is, sharing your knowledge about, hey, I've been running D&D for 40 years now, and here's some tips about how things go well. And yes, there's been attempts at making books about, give me 10 tips for running and done, there's books of that sort, but a lot of this can be passed on, word of mouth to people. Like, look, here, I'm going to give you a couple of hints. Every once in a while I get a person who knows that I've run B1 like 100 and something times now, which it's up above.
Still one of my favorite dungeons.
Yeah,
Zalagar and Rogan is
they'll say,
still one of my favorites.
What can I do to make this interesting as that? And I'm like, okay, here's what I've done. Boom, boom, boom. And I can give them a couple, I don't want to burden them down with, well, let me pull out my notes here, and you pull out a stack.
Sit down, children. Uncle Mike's going to explain.
Gather around. No, I just said, look,
it's the first 8 pages of that module. Here's just how you play the game.
And so they're like, wow, that's really, that's great. And so I think that's something we can give, because let's face it, this is something our generation, we were actually in on the creation of this. We were there when it first started. We weren't there when the first comic books came out. We weren't there, there's a lot of things that we missed the very first of. No, we were there during the first role-playing sessions and the first great era of role-playing, which is the 70s. And so we can justify being long-winded and talking about something that we know a lot about, which is, look, this is a good way. This is how you run a dungeon. This is how, if you have a group, what happens with that? You have that one player that's being disruptive. What do you do? I mean, all these things I've been asked over the years, and you kind of want off the knowledge, like, okay, well, here's what you do if this happens or that happens. And I don't think people realize the position we have in the hobby is that we are the first generation of gamers here. This is us. We are allowed to go out and say, look, here's what our long-winded knowledge has brought us. It's brought us.
And my editor is in the chat. Molly is in the chat.
Hopefully not suffer.
Well, at least you have an editor, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Eric knows what I'm talking about.
Stop trolling.
Yeah, we had some discussions.
For that?
We had some discussions earlier tonight that we'll not go into about editing, and people that don't use editing. But no, that's good that you have an editor. That's just having an editor puts you above some people we know in the.
I'm going to take a minute to praise Molly, because not only is she my editor for grammar and spelling and stuff, but she also knows D&D.
Oh,
so
great.
she's not just editing my prose, she's editing the system that and the mechanics and stuff. And she's great at catching things like, hey, this spell description said this over here, but this says this over here. How do you reconcile?
She's indispensable and needs a raise.
Yes. And she is absolutely indispensable. And I have indeed shared her with other publishers. Because she is just so good at what she does. So Molly, I hope you're not blushing at this.
Yes, it's hard to come across these people. These people do not spontaneously appear in the wild magically. That's just amazing. Yes.
Maybe we should think about a seminar of that, Jim, and a convention, D&D tips, and we'll get Joe there, or maybe a North Tech or something, and just sit there and give tips for like an hour. Because
I think the preface to this is, hey kid, you don't have to do this. Like this is how I would start that session. Mm-hmm. What's going to happen is a free-form panel of people who've been doing this for a while, and you are welcome to take as many notes as you want or record this. But the only reason that we are making these suggestions is we're just trying to save you your most precious commodity, which is time. That we've been here, done that, and encountered these things, and we're just trying to talk to this. Well, we could have an open mic, stand in line, ask questions. We'll take the questions. We'll try to answer it and move on. And I really like that, because then you've got a transfer of knowledge. And the number one thing that we all hate is that guy at work that he's got everything in his protective silo, because he just can't understand that the only way he's ever going to get promoted is if he trains everybody under him. And he just holds on to that information and he won't share it. And I think I think it would be a lot of fun, right? We should do Talking Crit pro tips for game masters. And we could just have an hour and a half long session. We have an open mic.
We can absolutely improv that because whatever question you have, ask us what you would do in X situation, because I get those IMs all the time. I really do. I got one the other day about, what do I do if I have a disruptive player and I have a strategy. There's a thing there's things you can do for that. And I think that's a great idea. We need to think about that as a seminar and get it.
I think it'd be a lot of fun, right? And
we could get 100 years of knowledge up there with just the 4 people here. We have good Lord. We have over.
I think it's more than 100.
Yep,
way
over 100.
Just talk about it, right? Like that's again. This is not to veer into stuff, but let's talk about it. Let's talk. Bring your question, bring your problem, and put it in front of the panel, and the panel will talk about it, and we'll roll the dice and see what we come up with. And it's not that we're always going to have an ideal solution, but the fact of the matter is that just
there's no right or wrong, Jim. There's never right or wrong because every group's different, and you could just like I always have a suggestion. My suggestion, and this is weird. We've talked about this a lot. Is when you have a romantic situation in the game, I'm the fade to black. I'm always the fade to black. We're going to fade to black, and the next morning, and then I make the players tell me what happens the next. You tell me what happens the next morning. I'm the DM. You tell me, you try.
But don't give me lurid details.
No, I don't want details.
What happens next? Say it slowly.
No, that's what we're not going to do, Joe.
Say it slowly into the microphone. I want to listen to this later.
Make sure you
because nobody
properly.
Look, every game I've ever played at a convention or around the table, nobody wants to hear that stuff. And yet there's always the one guy, mostly at conventions, that wants to role play that. And you're like,
well, see, now you see, you just said nobody. And then you said
because it's
that
not somebody you know.
problem.
I think it's the same guy that just travels around the United States and goes to every.
It could be. There was one of my closest friends, one of my gamers from my high school college group. We still get together once a year. He wanted to have an encounter with a barmaid, and I'm like, all right, yeah, pretty much. I did the fade to black. I'm like, yeah, all right, yeah, you hit it off. All right, next morning. No, I want details. I go,
you sad, lonely man. Tell me
like,
you
dude,
are not familiar with the touch of a real woman without telling me you're not familiar with the touch of a real woman.
I told him that. I said,
online.
You have a wife. If you don't know the details by now,
you never will.
We have issues.
Do you really want to talk to a 50-something-year-old man about your, you want me to speak like, hello,
your imaginary sex life.
I got an 18 charisma,
Your fabulous Canadian girlfriend is going to be impressed to hear about this.
That's when you hit him over the head with the book of erotic fantasy.
Oh yeah, God. Here's the book of erotic fantasy. You go do some research and come back later.
I love this book. It's my favorite.
So Joe, is this in your book? Or was this
what's that?
Was this in your book, or was
I do have a lot of tables in my book of lost tables.
Oh no!
Yeah, but is there one?
I do not have the STDs in there though.
All right.
Which Lamentations product has that though? Because one of them probably has that. So I could probably flip through there and
all roads lead back to Raggy.
All roads, yes. But
and
no, there's things like that. Like I said, you got the one guy. Usually this is a convention because if you're around your friends, your guys. It's cool, but you get one guy in there that you don't really know very well, and everything seems to be going. The session's great, and then something like that happens, and you're like, "Oh my god, I don't know."
The left turn to Albuquerque.
Yeah. What was I think?
That's another point in favor of mega dungeons because that rarely comes up unless they have a black pudding fetish or something.
Wow, I could go my whole life without knowing about that.
Yeah. You could be Rob Conley and go for the dryad in the pond. I mean, I'm just saying, not that it happened.
I'm going to make Rob Conley role play that if it ever happens. Rob,
if she's in a pond, wouldn't that make her a wet ad?
I want you to talk.
Oh, is that right?
If she's in a pond, wouldn't she be a wet ad?
It was great having you on the show, Joe. It really was just.
Oh boy, look at the time, Joe.
I'll be here all week. Try the veal.
And listen, there was only one thing we banned on this show, and that's dad jokes. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm sorry. I got to interrupt because I saw the greatest dad joke ever, and because my son doesn't watch the show, I'm getting ready to ambush him with it. Are you guys ready? Because it is without a doubt the best dad joke I've ever heard.
I love me a good dad joke. Shoot.
All right. It's to do. You have to do it via text messages. Are you ready? Knock, knock. And of course, they respond with who's there. And you say, hike. Hike who?
I know this one. Yeah.
Unsuspecting son, dad waiting with bated breath, sets the perfect trap.
Yeah.
I'm going
I've
to
seen
hit
that.
this at some point in the next week. And I'm waiting for the meltdown. It's going to be it's just going to be fabulous. It's going to be just awesome.
At least your son will get the joke. Mine will be like,
What's a
"Hey,
hike?
Hey, Agile Monk.
Confused noise.
Want to say hi?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
God.
great.
Oh, well now, so Joe, we've meandered, but is there anything that we haven't discussed that you really want to make sure that people watching the show know about with the greatest advertised product currently in the RPG market?
I think we've covered a ton of territory on it. It's just it's completely self-contained, but it can also take you into other books in the series. So you can always upgrade to the 4 rules, or you can always start using the Swords of Wuja or the Swords of Cthulhu or Book of Lost Lore. You can always keep bolting stuff onto it, but you don't have to. You can, if you wanted to, you could spend 10 years playing a game with these rules and have a blast.
That's perfect. That's just perfect.
By the way, folks, if you haven't figured it out yet, there's a link on the bottom of the screen. 10 Cars There's Tavern. .game/ADD. And it's not attention deficit disorder. It's Adventures Dark and Deep. And that'll take you to the drive-through link for the Adventures Dark and Deep Lite rules. And Joe was nice enough to give me a copy, and they are, and he has a bard class. All right, so I happen to like bards. Those that don't, sorry. And I played a gnome for 2 years in Joe the Lawyer's campaign. Those of you who don't like gnomes, I understand why, but it just fit the campaign. Okay, I'm not a gnome fan, but I am a fan of.
I actually don't. Sure. I like gnomes. You're gonna like the adventure hook that's coming up on Sunday on my channel. It is
oh,
gnome
really?
centric.
Okay.
I'm not gnome curious.
You know, I had to play gnome because Matt Jackson detests gnomes, and we all sent Matt garden gnomes when he got his new house, just because he hated gnomes. So I mean, you know, I was like, I gotta play a gnome just in feeling good for him. Agile, by the way, thank you for gifting some. Yes. And gifting to the channel, and I
very nice.
Gifting some memberships. Thank you so much.
Yeah, he's been one of my longtime supporters, Agile Monk.
Where's my membership? I don't even have a membership.
Oh, please.
Oh,
you're covered in the glory of being on the show.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I like things.
Membership.
I like the videos to be surprises days later, so I'm okay. Hey, can I ask you? Hey, since we're just talking here, it looks like are we going to have a show, or are we going to have a big post about the shocking stuff that you found out about the memorial, Eric? Is that I was absolutely blown away by that video.
I without going into too many details, I had a phone call yesterday with somebody that started their own little digging and said, well, I know you've dug into this before. And then we talked, it was an hour, and then I got some files, and then I did my own digging. And I will say this, God help me if I had had AI to assist me in my searches. Uh, Nearly a decade ago, when I was first digging into the Gygax Memorial Fund, because the plethora of knowledge that I have found is uh, it's a plethora. It's huge, but there's no money in the fund right now. It's
It's
at
negative.
negative
Yes.
9,000 plus, but that's as of 2023. 2024 taxes will be due before November 15th. So if I had a scrying bowl, if the tavern had a privy where I could make predictions from, um, they talk about a Kickstarter on the Gygax Memorial page, and the date has changed. Like it'll be in March. It'll be this summer. I suspect it's going to be this October, but I could be wrong. I no inside information. This is just me reading tea leaves because they're looking to raise as much as $1 million for Gary's.
I'm
Well,
sure that's what the money's for. Yes,
it's
I'm very
interesting.
sure.
If you have not, this is really, and this is something Eric and I have talked about for years, and Eric talked about it for even longer, and it's just been a continuing topic of conversation. It's wow, it was pretty shocking. The latest revelations are very interesting, and it should be an interesting topic of discussion in the year to come, because I know that I think Paul and them have a very good plan. The table looks wonderful. I think it'd be great to have the table, which we're talking about. There's a table at Lake Geneva, the park. This summer I went to EggCon. I sat on the bench. It's in a great spot. I mean, it's just a bench, though. It has a bench that says, Gary Gygax bench.
Right.
But
There's a bench. There's I think a placard.
But the table is going to be the place where the table is supposed to be. You can see from there. And it's a great plan. It's good. Gary will be at the front of the table, and a big stone table you can play D&D at or sit at. I think and the park's beautiful. It'd be a great thing. But man, this, I don't know. I don't know that I can give money to a fund that has negative money in it, because
Veteran wants to know how a fund can go negative. It's not mean that they're bouncing checks. It could mean that they're accounting for monies that are like, all right, maybe we owe somebody X number of dollars to do the design work, and we owe 100,000, but we've only given 90,000. Well, we owe 10,000, and that's showing it. There's no details on the Section O or whatever they call it, the breakdown sheet for the nonprofits. And trust me, I was in a rabbit hole last night doing a lot of digging. It's going to be interesting because this is something that the community has been talking about, and we've seen.
Bupkis.
I mean,
that's what we've seen. We've seen bupkis.
Right. Well, here's what I'm surprised by. Okay, and this is where I get a little. I turn into the internal affairs investigator as opposed to just somebody going. With the Gygax Memorial Fund under new leadership, we were supposed to get transparency, and we were supposed to. Gail had stopped uploading the tax documents. Paul did a great job uploading it up until the year that the money started getting spent. So 2022 and 2023 are not on the website. They are publicly available. Go to ProPublica or any of these other sites that track this stuff. You can find all the filings. You could theoretically request it from the fund, but it's just that I find it noticeable that the year that they spent like $170,000 is the year that they stopped posting their taxes. So it's not just me looking into it. There's somebody else that has certain connections that's looking into it. I'm hoping
it sucks because this is a cool thing. I mean, we all want there to be a Gygax Memorial. We want there to be one, and it just sucks because then you're sitting there going, okay, somebody's eventually going to ask you, Eric, well, do you not want to see a memorial? What's wrong with you? What an ass you are. But it has to do with the fact that this has never been transparent from day one, and it's gotten worse over the last decade, and it's a swirling toilet, and it's just been that way for a long, long time. And I appreciate the efforts of Paul to try to, do things. I mean, he's actually done things. Of all the years this has been around, he put a bench in the park. I mean, thumbs up. And they have the party there every year, and the Gygax days and stuff. He's done Founders Day. So things have been done in the last few years, but it's been much too slowly. There's been no plan, and we gripe about this all the time that for a whole decade, the Gygax name was erased from history deliberately by certain people. We're going to take everything with his name off the market, and we're going to hoard it. Hopefully somebody will give us $1 million.
Let's just not mince words. I'm sorry, but it's Gale. Gary died, and Gale yanked the license away from Troll Lord. And Gale was the sole person who wanted control over the Gygax estate. It all sits squarely with Gale. She's had ever-increasing health problems, and Paul seemed to be a voice of sanity. Paul's the person who actually inventoried all of everything that Gale has of Gary's for the court. This was settled with the additional will that was found, but all the recalcitrance since Gary died sits squarely with Gale.
Yep.
And mincing words about it doesn't change the very simple fact, which is Gale sat for over a decade and let Gary's name just dwindle and dwindle and dwindle. And for somebody who's supposed to be preserving his legacy and making sure that there's something there for Alex and Alex's children and so on and so, like, this is all just a travesty. And I appreciate that Paul stepped in. I appreciate that there was finally some action. I was talking the other day, I have a copy of one of the very first things that came in the very first year after Gary died is Gale printed through the memorial. They printed a collection of Usenet articles that Gary had written called Cheers Gary. And it took me a while, but I found a copy because she did a very short print run of it. And I was talking about it with somebody the other day. They had never heard of this. And I said, and that's part of the problem, right? If it had been me, I would have had Cheers Gary Volume 1 and Cheers Gary Volume 2 and 3 and 4. And those things would always be in print so that you could buy them and you could have Gary's thoughts on game mastering and so on and so forth, literally at your fingertips. And Gale did a horrible job of managing this. And Gale did a terrible job of managing the memorial. And Gale did a terrible job of putting together. Who was it? Was it her brother or brother-in-law? Who was it?
It was her sister and brother-in-law. Or brother-in-law.
Her sister and brother-in-law. The idea was not preserve Gary's name and put it out there and have a memorial. And it exhausted the goodwill the community had. How much money got poured into the Gygax Memorial Fund from private donations, from the Wizards of the Coast reprint books, all of these things. And it just sat and it sat and it sat and it causes heartache. This is why people go to the grave and leave dice in Lake Geneva, because there's nothing else. There is the brick, the singular brick.
Yeah, by the brick. They go to the brick.
But let's not hopscotch around the person who was responsible for this and who clearly surrounded herself with people who accomplished nothing for over a decade.
Exactly.
It's my understanding that, and I, classify this as opinion, but it's my understanding that she was taking advice that from people near her, that somebody was going to come along and offer her 6 or 7 figures for a computer game based on Gary's work. And this idea of turtling all of the IP was to make it more attractive to that mythical unicorn who was just going to come up to her house with a
Joe. I heard the same thing, and it was
the
number I heard was $1 million.
And that was Joe DeSantis, who
that was the money.
yeah, Gail courted Joe when Joe was interested in making a D&D movie, and again, this is all writ large in the court actions and the transcripts, and again, I just think, okay, at this point, I'm just numb. I'm glad there's a table. I'm glad that there is, in theory, some progress going on. Eric, I don't know what shoes you got to drop, but frankly, as somebody who threw money at this, not a lot, but who was one of the people who was like, okay, here you go, here's some cash, because Gary changed my life just the same way he changed everybody's life on this show and in the channel. You know, we're all products. And I'm sorry, Dave Arneson deification crowd, but I'm going to stick with Gary on this. But Gary changed our lives in a huge way. And Gail managed, after Gary died, Gail has squandered goodwill. She has squandered the goodwill of people who sent $10, $50, $100, $1,000, however much they sent. And along the way, like, you know, Agile Monk mentioned Steve Chenault. You know, Steve Chenault and Jeffrey Talanian, two great people in our industry. And both of these guys got caught in Gail's misguided crosshairs that this is whatever it is that she believed. And I speak from some painfully personal experience, because weirdly enough, Gail was my friend on Facebook forever. And in the midst of people trying to get Gail just to have some transparency, I had an ongoing conversation with Gail for the better part of a couple of years. I have shared the transcript with Eric at one point. And I was trying everything I could just to get her to embrace some semblance of transparency. And what that got me was all caps and batshit crazy replies. And at this point, I mean, if you'd like a copy of the transcripts, I'll just copy and paste my entire Facebook message conversation with Gail, and you can have it. And you can look where I make reasonable request after reasonable request, where I point out things that just would be the easiest thing to do to try to take some of the stink off of this. And what did Gail do? Never once was anything rational what she was willing to approach.
No.
And that's a shame. It's a terrible, terrible shame, because all of us, anybody who's played Dungeons and Dragons, anybody who thinks that Gary created something special that's changed all of our lives and how you miss Gary and all that honest sentiment has been wasted and squandered by a memorial that has delivered nothing. I appreciate that Paul has stepped in. And Paul has managed to convince Gail to let him create a catalog of what's there. But Gail sold off one-of-a-kind unique items, which is her wont to do as the widow. And I realize that makes some people upset, and I know that upset a number of the Gygax families. I know that there were legal actions over that. But if just we're talking about the memorial, I have a better memorial for Gary on my bookshelves of all these things that came through my childhood and everything else. And at this point, that's a better memorial for Gary than anything I've seen that's come out of the memorial, the official memorial. And that's why I'm sorry. I realize I snapped at you, Mike. I didn't mean to, but we can't put around it. It's Gail.
I'm sorry. I was just, you know, I'm usually the loudmouth ranter. I was trying to soft pedal a little bit, but you're absolutely.
There's no point to soft pedaling this.
There is. And you're absolutely right, Jim. You're right.
It's Gail. It's Gail. It's Gail. It's Gail. It's Gail. And quit. You know, don't pussyfoot around it. Jesus Christ.
What blows my mind is that this was 2015, 2016 when I really started pulling at threads, and I used to get PM'd by Gail at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, and I know this because I was working midnights at the time, so I'd be walking to my car, it'd be 10:30 at night, and I'd be getting PMs, And if she was being nice, it was she would send a PM, and then at the end of the thread of the PM, it would be Gail Gygax. But then the same account, if they were threatening me with legal action for a comment left on my blog, not by me, but by a commenter threatening to sue me and essentially take everything I own, it was Mrs. E. Gary Gygax. So either there were two personalities in one, or somebody else had access to her account.
And I would agree with that. I agree with that. And come on, like, first of all, it's not that I'm passionate about the Gary Gygax Memorial. At the heart of all of the three of us, and Joe, I'm trying not to lump you in.
Oh, lump away.
But
lump away.
But really, again, what I would say about this is that I'm not passionate about the memorial, right? I viewed that as money lit on fire, and I never expected the god awful statue that we all saw pictures of. I was never emotionally invested in that. What makes me angry, and this is a common thread between Mike and Eric and myself, is it's the grifters. It's the grifters in this industry that are the Ken Whitmans and the fill in the blanks, right? Mm-hmm. It's the projects that take forever and never ship, or, by some miracle, they finally do ship. And we can look at the history of crowdfunding over the last 15 years, and you can see plenty of examples of things where you're absolutely right to come at this from a place of, I can forgive this. And nobody should be spending money on crowdfunding efforts that you can't afford to lose. Like that's one of the most basic tenets. But there's very few people in the industry, there's very few people in the hobby who have regularly made an effort to try to keep these people's feet to the fire. And it's that guy, it's that guy over there, right? It's Eric. And then indirectly, then Mike, and now myself. And so I'm not passionate about the memorial. What I'm passionate about is seeing something come from all the money and all the goodwill that was expended by people who should reasonably expect to see something for what they put into this. And when we sort of pussyfoot around it, yeah. Again, Gail's had health problems. I too have seen in my messages with Gail's Facebook account, I've seen different tones. Mm-hmm. I've seen rational, and I've seen not so much. And I don't want to be ranty about this. I'm not interested in ranting about it. But I just think we're at a point now, particularly if it's coming up again as a subject, we need to be honest, and we need to not be ambiguous. And it's not Luke. It's not any of the Gygax children. It's not, it's not some sinister force from the Wizards of the Coast or whatever fevered imaginings of former TSR. Well,
remember, she sued Luke and them over the Gygax name, for Gygax magazine.
Over their name. Over their name.
Yeah. Over their own name.
A lot of this saga is the main, it's like a Shakespearean tragedy, and every Shakespearean hero had a fatal flaw, and the fatal flaw in this is greed. It's always been greed. It's always a pot of money, that might be made. That's what I've, this is opinion only. This is what I've heard, but that's the reason for the consolidation of
yes. Tom DeSantis testified to this in court.
Yes.
That trying to have the IP as tidy and clean as possible would make it easier for negotiations, because there's been plenty of movie deals where it turned out the intellectual property was not actually cleanly owned and clearly able to be sold.
But in the long run, Jim, which led to Gary's name being off of products for a decade.
Yeah.
And Ty brought something up earlier about how WotC was complicit in this, and they were a bit too, because they had their little rant about how oh, those old guys, they were a bunch of racists, and this, that. So I mean, they fed off it too. I mean, it was a whole thing, and it wasn't just Gail, it was Watsy too. But Gail was the reason that this all got pulled and was just stuck in a box, shoved under the bed, and forgotten about for 10 years.
And it wasn't even for a pot of money. It was for an imaginary pot of money, a speculative pot of money.
The number
Maybe
I heard was
this will happen.
They thought the Gygax name was worth $1 million. Once again, this is stuff I've heard. This is all opinion, but the number they were looking at is $1 million. Well, guess what? It's not worth $1 million if you don't promote the product. And when it turned out, who is the movie producer, Eric, that talked to Gail for a while?
Tom DeCanto, we mentioned him.
Yes. Once he found out that if he bought the Gygax Legacy, all he was getting was everything after D&D. He wasn't getting anything D&D related.
But that wasn't the only issue. He didn't know who actually owned it.
And who owned it? Yes.
Let's touch on Ty's point. Ty makes a great point. Regardless of what Gail did, the blue-haired shitweasels at WotC embarked on a systematic campaign to eliminate Gary's legacy. I don't think that's debatable. Now, those are Ty's words. I'm just reading them. I agree with a lot of that sentiment. And most interestingly, that sort of what we saw particularly coming out in the forward of the book, that John Peterson did not write the forward. It was somebody else that wrote the forward. And that fella has come forward and said, yes, I wrote that. And it would be better, blah, blah, blah. The shit wheels, for the most part, are gone. And that brings us to something I was going to talk about this week, which we haven't touched on because we're still ranting. But I think, to Ty's point, I think the people that were really at the root of what I will call the anti-Gary sentiment at WotC, so long, farewell, they're no longer there.
I think that's a good point.
Yes.
And I think they are gone. And I think that, and I think that whoever's in charge now, God help us, it would finally ever be somebody that's knows gaming. I think they would be I think it'd be very, very good of them to go and look and see what people who like the game and love the game have been talking about for years and try to make that right. And one of the things you can make that right is not demonizing your founding fathers. I mean, that's like a lose-lose. That'd be like if baseball came out and all they talked about was what an alcoholic Babe Ruth was and Ty Cobb was a racist. I mean, why would you do that to your product? And not focus on the good parts of your product instead of, oh yeah, those old baseball guys, they were all, the black. We're gonna talk about the Black Sox scandal. We're not gonna talk.
All right.
Who would do that?
Okay.
Nobody does that with their product.
We got stuff to talk about. And it's been an interesting week, right? We got a little bit of time left, but there's been some interesting things this week. I have a couple. I hadn't talked about it with the other guys yet.
You mean somebody's actually announced a Cyborg Commando movie?
Stop. I can only get so erect. So I want to touch on a couple of things, but number one is I heard more things that make me feel like there are people coming back to the WotC fold based on new leadership. And so magically enough, through the mystical device that I have, I had a conversation with somebody this week who pretty much said exactly what we have thought, that a couple of key departures at WotC have should be taken as a movement in a different direction, and that I sort of jokingly called it the WotC apology tour at Gen Con. That has continued apace, and there are people who are now, okay, burn me once, shame on you, burn me twice, shame on me, but there are people who are re-engaging with WotC who were like, not a chance. And so I think that's a good sign. I think, does that mean I'm building a giant Scrooge McDuck money bin for all the money of WotC licensing? That's not what I'm saying. But I am certainly of the belief that there is clearly a sea change at WotC. And I'm happy about that, right? I'm happy that people who denigrated a lot of the people who are in this hobby and would fall pretty much into our demographics, I'm very happy that there are people who are figuring things out. that maybe it's easier to build bridges than just burn them to the pylons. So I think that's good. I wanted to talk about something else, and I don't want to make it a big, long, ranty thing. I have been friends with Shane. I've been friends with Shane Hensley from Pinnacle Press since 1993.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Shane and I grew up very close to each other. In fact, Shane moved away when he was at the end of grade school, but we grew up within about 20-25 minutes. And in fact, one of the first times I was talking to Shane and we were sort of trading notes, he went to a school that unfortunately was painted a very dark purple, and after about 3 weeks in the sun, it faded to a very interesting color of like mauve or orchid. And there was no pride in this. It was just this very strange pastel colored school. But I've known Shane for a long time, and Shane has tried to navigate. You have Deadlands, which extends the Civil War, and has done his dead level best to try to remove slavery out of the game product. He's tried to walk a very fine line between making a game that he wants and making sure that game doesn't cross into different lines. So this week, Shane, like a lot of people over the past week, Shane made some comments that got him in some hot water with people. Shane is one of the few, I will say, fairly outspoken conservative voices in the RPG industry, and I was in a room one time with some people that were talking about Shane and how great his products were, and they said, but his politics are garbage. Like, it just completely dismissed everything that Shane had produced, and that really bothers me, right? Because I think you can divorce things. I know that there will be people who will want to send me hate mail. Please go ahead. But Shane tried to have a conversation with people. He made an initial post early this week or last week, and it was just a raw mess of emotions. And then realizing that he had not said some things as well as he could have, he then tried to engage with some more people and so on and so forth. And in the end, what I would say is Shane's a decent guy, and he makes decent game products. He's been a part of this industry for 30 some years. I used to talk to him when he was running a store in Virginia, and Shane is exactly the person that you would want as a friend. Shane's the guy that if you called him and said, I need help, he would be there in a heartbeat. When Shane was clearing out his mom and dad's old house, he found his 12-inch G.I. Joe tank, and he put a post on Facebook about how sad he was that he was going to have to throw it away. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. I will add that to my motor pool. And he was like, it's going to cost a bunch of money. And I said, I don't care. Like, I'm still going to rescue one of your childhood toys. But Shane is not the devil. I saw a lot of posts where people went way too far. And I would say to everybody that Shane embodies what I would say is the right attitude in role playing, which is all of our tables are big enough. You should be able to sit down at a table and roll dice with people, and it doesn't matter who they are or what they believe. When we all sit down at the table, we should be able to roll dice and get along. And that's probably the best message to come out of the last week and a half, that we can find a way to sit down and roll dice with each other, because that's the right thing to do.
I think, Jim, as somebody who co-runs a con, that you always walk a tightrope, and because you want a gaming environment to be welcoming for everybody, and you don't want people to think about anything when you walk through the door of a convention except I want a game, and I want to play, I want to play Gangbusters, and I want to play D&D, and I want to play Shadow Dark. That's all that you want to worry about. And so it's really tough when you're pushed from one side or another to basically take a side.
Yeah.
And, and there doesn't have to be sides in gaming. There just has to be gaming. Just sit down and have think about when you were in high school and you sat down at a table and that, and everybody just talked about what music was going on and what you were doing after class and what girls you were dating. And that's the kind of atmosphere you want. You want to just sit down and have a great time. And so it's tough because it's really tough to walk that tightrope and not make somebody mad. But, you have to do that. You have to walk a tightrope if you're, in charge of a game convention or a game company, unless you want to alienate one side of the other of your constituents there.
Yes.
I myself, if you look at my Facebook feed, it's baseball, go Rangers, although looks like we're not going to the playoffs now. We lost 3 in a row. And it's funny family stuff, and it's this and that. And some people in the last week have said, and this is something I believe for a long time, social media is really a cesspool. It depending on how you use it. And I've met most of my friends.
Right.
I have more texts because of social media. I mean, social media has done a lot of good things. But man, social media, if the more you study it, if there's some really good books you can read about social media, but it's created to have algorithms that promote things that promote engagement. And engagement is anything that keeps you on the social media clicking. And that's the problem, is that people don't realize what social media is up to. And that's what social media is about. It's about engagement, and you engage people by enraging them a lot of the time.
Right.
And not, yes, there's pictures of fuzzy kittens. Cute fuzzy kittens is one form of engagement that works with, a lot of people. Sometimes I'm a sucker for a dog and a cat friendship video. I will, because I love dogs and cats. When I see a kitten and a puppy snuggling together, I'm clicking. I want to see more. But a lot of people are enraged. The bait for them is enragement. Enrage them more, and they click more. There was a study years ago about YouTube videos. The study was how many videos do I have to watch before I get to content that's absolutely disgusting and horrible and just over the top? And it wasn't very long, because once you start clicking those videos, it starts feeding you more of the same. And after about a day or so, all your videos are that extreme. They're the most extreme. And they found you can go from 0 to neo-Nazi in like a day. I mean, literally, because
and that is kind of the point. Like, I put up a video on this channel this morning. And folks, if you know me on social media, I stay clear of social political stuff. But I did a video on us versus them, how social media divides and dehumanizes.
I was thinking about that too. Yes, it's
because that is a large part of what got us where we are today. And that's part of what Mike is saying. It's engagement. And you want to get the likes and the rah-rahs and the comments from your side, and you know what? They're very happy for you to get the angry comments and the dislikes from the other side, because it's all engagement. Whether it's YouTube or Facebook or X, I don't know about Blue Sky. I don't know if anybody's at Blue Sky, but I mean,
I'm on it. I'm on it because I want to be on both sides. My games are for everybody, so I'm on X and Blue Sky.
I know MeWe is mostly a desert these days, but it actually seems to want to generate conflict, and the conflict issue comes down to when it's us versus them, and when we say that words equal violence, that means that violence is no worse than words. It conflates what we believed for hundreds of years, and it removes these barriers that kept us civil. You wouldn't say certain shit at your local bar because Joe next to you will bop you in the face for what you said, but you'll say it behind the screen because you can't get to me. So it's a dangerous time, personally. And I think we have to learn how to use social media for what we can, for its best parts, like Mike was talking about, and try as best we can to avoid the division that it naturally is designed to encourage.
And there's at this point now, there's actual studies out, because social media has been around long enough where they've seen the effect on children, on teenagers. I mean, the fact that kids that spend an inordinate amount of time on social media, score less on testing. They're less social. They're actually less socially adapted than kids that don't spend time on social media. Imagine how messed up that is. They actually relate to kids better, other kids better, if they're off social media than if they are. And there's actual studies. Look up the stuff. It's not good to spend a lot of time on social media, and especially not a lot of good time to doom scroll, as the kids say. Doom scroll all day. It's not good stuff. It's bad. It's bad. It's really bad.
So I'm reading through the comments as we go, and what I would say is, like I said, I've known Shane since 1993, and Shane's a good guy. He's not weak. He tried to address concerns from friends of his from a different political perspective than one he normally sort of subscribes to, and he had exactly what somebody just said, that most people are reasonable, and there was reasonable conversation in some of the comments of his post. But there were the people who were like every issue, you have a fringe, and you have a raucous fringe, and that fringe can never be satisfied. And I think that's a big part. If I ranted earlier tonight about Gale, I'm trying to be very level right now and just say life is too short. 99% of the people that you game with at conventions or you interact with on this show and so on, you have far more in common and you get along. Joe and I had a very brief misunderstanding over this past year,
for which I still apologize.
No, like that's not the point of this, Joe. But my point is that Joe felt slighted, and we had a great conversation, and I was like, I didn't take it that way. And everything is good. And Joe and I are friends, right? Joe and I are better friends than from before the conversation, because Joe is a human being and Joe is having a bad week. And the great thing about being friends is that you can have a bad week and you can be shitty to your friends and your friends still like you regardless, right? And your friends understand, and they can put themselves in your shoes and they can understand that you're having a bad week.
You communicated.
That's
oh
right.
God. Oh, what? I thought that was a lost skill.
But it's not, and it shouldn't be. And in the fullness of time, nothing from this week is going to impact people like Shane and so on and so forth. There's a national period of what the hell have we all just been through, but more importantly, the lesson out of the last 7 or 8 days is just talk to people. Don't talk at people, talk to people. Now that comes from the guy who just ranted about the Gygax Memorial, so take it for what you will. But I want to have some righteous indignation now and then, and that was part of it. Mike, have you got some CDs for us this week?
Yeah. Give me 1 second. I was.
All right. You want to get my movie while you're doing that?
Yeah.
All right. Hold on. I'm coming.
Uh-oh.
All right. Here we go. So I got to do something this week I was very excited to do. I finally got to buy my ticket to Tron Ares, and my butt will be in the seat on opening night in the IMAX, and I can't wait. And so my movie recommendation to watch is Tron Legacy.
Wow.
Is it perfect? No. Is it got a great ending? It's a little weird. But as the kid, 1983 was a pretty pivotal summer, right? And at one point I got to go to California, and I got to see Tron in a movie theater because my grandmother dropped me off at the theater because she just needed a break from annoying 14-year-old. And I saw Tron and I was just blown away. And so when Tron Legacy came out, however many years ago, 14 years ago or whatever, I was all excited and so on and so forth. There are payday moments, right? Where Kevin Flynn's son goes back into the grid. There's a lot of really great things. It's got Olivia Wilde, hubba hubba. And so if you've seen the commercials and you're interested in Ares and so on and so forth, I would recommend both giving Legacy a rewatch before you go see Ares. And I really, really recommend, and I'm going to use this as a segue into Mike, Dear God, listen to the Daft Punk Tron Legacy soundtrack. If you have Amazon, go listen to the full-blown expanded version that Amazon has an exclusive on, because it's slicker than cat shit on linoleum. It's a great soundtrack.
Nice.
It's an amazing soundtrack that ties in with the movie. But that's your. It's not an oldie and a goodie, but it's an adequate movie that you should watch before you see Ares and get ready to go back into the grid programs. Back to you, Mike.
I have 5 CDs. I've got a band called Centromatic, who is a local band. This album's called Always Inconvenient. It's probably not everybody's cup of tea. It's a local band who has about 5 or 6 albums out. I listen to everything, local stuff, famous stuff, whatever. So there probably nobody's ever heard of it except for me. I'm talking about, but Centromatic's a really good band. Here's kind of a one-hit wonder band, Fastball. If you remember a few years ago, they had a big song called The Way.
I remember that song.
This is a good album. I listened to the album maybe 3 or 4 times, and I finally gave it a deep listen. And it's actually a pretty darn good album. It's got some really, really good top 40 type music. And then returning from last week, we have Dave Alvin again of the Blasters, Western, kind of a country western rock album, really good stuff. Husker Du, Midwest kick-ass hard rock band. But I'm going to tell you this, I am really impressed. I don't remember buying this, but I'm glad I bought it. I'm on disc 2 of the Cars anthology, and I'm going to tell you, I think that this has about every single song the Cars ever did on the album. The second disc is just as strong as the first disc, and I've had this 2 or 3 weeks now, and I am really, really reliving my 70s age with the Cars. They were just a damn good band. I mean, all their hits are solid. They're solid hits. They had some rock stuff. They had some kind of ballady stuff. Towards the end of the 80s, they got a little more top 40 and not quite as kick asses in the 70s. But man, I am really enjoying this a lot, because every time I hear something like Touch and Go or Drive or Magic, I just get a memory of something that happened in the 80s. Oh yeah, I remember when I heard this song, Double Life, anything from Candio. I mean, the Cars' first album, Candio, is pretty much the soundtrack of my high school life, because
Heartbeat City was the album for me, right?
And that was a little later on. Yeah, that was more of their top 40 when pretty much they had almost everything from Heartbreak City was a hit, or the album before was a MTV staple. So yeah, I don't even know if this is still available. If you find the Cars anthology, if you're interested in the Cars, or if you like the Cars, go look for this. It is really good. There's a million songs. There's like 40 or 50 songs on this. So I don't even know when I bought it, when I got it, but I'm glad I got it, because it's been a really good listen the past 2 weeks.
So just as an aside, to lead into next week, I have begun a deep dive into Yes this week, and so I'm going to be chiming in next week about Yes.
Are you trying to tell us that you need you're smoking dope again? Is this what you're?
No.
Okay.
I started wading through the catalog a day or so ago, and I think it's going to be it's my soundtrack for the next few days.
Did you have you been taking LSD the last week?
No, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but my pharmaceutical recreational period never happened.
I'm just saying, because that and Yes went together during high school. Not saying I didn't know I'm just telling you, I knew a few guys. They would spend a weekend listening to Yes albums, and they were really hard to get a hold of during that weekend, because they were kind of flying, and then they would pull the album cover open. Wow, look at the cool. I mean, because the artwork on those is well renowned as probably the best artwork on any rock album of all time. Right. The artwork's incredible on those Yes albums. So, well, if you're not stoned, I can't wait to hear about that next week, Jim. If you come in, if there's a haze around you, then we'll know what happened with those Yes albums. Yep.
Let me tell you about this roundabout.
Oh, roundabout, man. Oh, if you play it backwards, oh my God.
On that note.
Yeah, that's a good place to call it done. Stick a pin in it.
Thank you for joining us. I had a great time with Joe over the weekend.
Yes, thanks, Joe. Great to have you on.
Yeah, okay.
Always. Remember, folks, quick reminder, if you haven't checked it out yet, 10 cards tavern.game/ADD. It'll take you to Adventures Dark
Oh, it's
and
so pretty. Look at
Deep
it.
Light.
And look at that typeface. It harkens back to an earlier day.
It's got the
An
orange
orange
binding.
spine, no less.
It's got the orange binding. Orange binding, folks. Orange binding. Thank you to Jim. Thank you to Mike. And thank you to you all. Mr. Monk, I want to thank you for gifting everybody with some memberships. It was great. And other than that, live stream tomorrow night, Friday night, Saturday night. And then next week, there will probably only be this one live stream. Because I will be at ShireCon.
That's right.
ShireCon!
Which is not, in fact, this weekend, but next weekend.
As Joe
get
pointed out.
Your hotel reservation there, Joel.
Joe,
Immediately as I log off of this, I'm going to get onto the phone.
Yeah,
with the
thank
hotel.
goodness
bladder
Joe
before the
didn't show
show
up.
even started. I was like, huh?
I was ready to drive off
Good thing you had this live.
Joe was there. I'm the first one here. This is awesome. Nobody else.
I'm the only one here.
The VFW, they
That would have
serve
been
you
a
a beer and say,
It's the
You know,
Joe
that's
Bloch
right.
convention.
Oh.
No con.
Joe Con,
God.
24/7.
Folks, God bless.